afraid to experiment. If it's success, it's your success. And of course, your success is my success. But if you failed, I'm accountable for that. I think that's ultimately what I encourage innovation and encourage better team health and productivity.
All right. Welcome back to Tech Teams Today. Our guest today is Nan Guo, SVP of Engineering at Zendesk, where she leads global teams building scalable infrastructure, AI platforms, and customer-facing systems that support millions of users. Her career has spanned high-throughput, low-latency systems at companies like Adobe and TubeMogul, and today she's helping shape how AI and trust intersect in enterprise software. Nan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you've led engineering teams through hypergrowth phases across multiple companies from ad tech and now customer experience at Zendesk. What through lines have stayed consistent in how you lead and scale teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I reflect my career, I think the single biggest through line for me has been the focus on enabling people. So at TubeMogul, we were scaling real-time bidding system, and the success depends on small autonomous team have ownership. So today at Zendesk, the same principle apply for our infrastructure and the platform team. We empower them to with the right ownership and accountability and clear outcomes so they can innovate and move fast.
Yeah, so autonomy, a big part of autonomy is trust, right? What's sort of your recipe for building autonomous teams that have that agency and trust where you don't have to micromanage or overly supervise them? That seems to be a fine balance to walk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The trust is earned. It's not given. Not because you are in a certain position, you automatically get the trust. So first of all, you want to make sure the team understands your vision and you're actually talking to them, connect with them, learning what they motivate them, and first getting to know each other. So when you're coming as a leader, you want to get to know each other, spend time with them. Secondly, be clear in your communication. What do you expect of them, right? So, and also building the psychology safety for them to be able to experiment. So we have this blameless culture. When you make mistake, we're not blaming you, but we're actually going to learn from the system or failures, and we can do better going forward. That build trust. Another thing I felt like building trust is you are in there with them. When the difficult time, when they're firefighting, when there's something failing, you're actually in the trench to recover from that, not just give orders. So I think that building the trust, once trust is there, and then it's much better collaboration and much better encouragement for them to deliver.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get respect from your team if you're only there for the victories, right? You need to be there for all of it, right? And going back to blameless culture, for me, I always think about, I don't know if you've ever read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin.
I have not read that.
Highly recommend it, but basically it's about never blame anyone. It's by two ex-Navy SEALs. And basically it talks about how they led SEAL teams. And it was basically, it taught me, and I read it first like 5 or 6 years ago, totally changed my leadership style into there's always a role that you played in the failure, so never blame anybody, and it really can help you build like a culture where you have a much more likelihood to win if you have a blameless culture.
Absolutely, totally agree. Cannot agree more. We all have scars. So we all have a failure in the past. Failure should be a part of the success, meaning like you learn from failure, they know, and then you can become more successful going forward. Failure shouldn't be the opposite of success. It's a part of component toward success. Another thing is I think the blameless culture also require you establish accountability and ownership culture, because you cannot have people just feel like they can just reckless go, right? So accountability, ownership, and blameless culture all go hand to hand.
Yeah, I think that's so important because sometimes people move into leadership positions and something goes wrong, and the first question is, all right, who's responsible for that? Who did that? And it's like, well, you are, because you're the leader, right?
Exactly. I told my team, don't afraid to experiment. If it's success, it's your success. And of course, your success is my success. But if you failed, I'm accountable for that. So I think that encourage the team to experiment and be able to have this basically the innovative mindset, but at the same time, they trust the leader. They show up when the failure come. They will not going to be blamed, but leader will take accountability. I think that's ultimately will encourage innovation and encourage a better team health and productivity.
Yeah, and I think that goes for all teams, right? Is knowing that your leader has your back, and that if you take a risk and it doesn't pan out, they're going to take ownership for you. They're going to protect you maybe from a department or maybe a board or executive team or something like that. I think everyone will perform a lot better when they have that sort of trust, agency, ownership, which ties into sort of my next question. What was sort of, or maybe this is more than one, sort of inflection points in your leadership journey that shape sort of what you're saying about blameless culture and how you operate and lead at Zendesk today?
Yeah. I reflect when I joined Zendesk 5.5 years ago. I joined two weeks before pandemic hit. So we actually sent everybody home. I only have 2 weeks to get to know people in person and in office. So, but during the meantime, this is never done that before as my leadership journey. And when you join a big company and a big team, and you'll not be able to see people. So, but at that time, that what I learned is, and also my team is global. So one of the most pivotal moments when I was first leading a truly global team, I have a team in U.S. in San Francisco Bay Area, Madison, Wisconsin, Dublin, Ireland, and Australia, Melbourne, Australia. And over the time, we also grow team in Pune, Krakow, Pune, India, Krakow in Poland, and you name it, we're constantly expanding. And in the pandemic, you actually send everybody home, and that's everybody working remotely. It's a completely different way of working. What I learned from that, working with a hybrid mode at that time is fully remote team, and you cannot just replicate what you're working before when everybody in the same location. And even the same communication for different culture, different country, they will receive differently. So that forced myself to be deliberate about the communication practice and constantly getting feedback from the team. Are they hearing what I'm saying? And is that my communication style? It's meeting with their need. And so really also embracing this synchronized work, because it changed the practice. You cannot possibly have the whole conversation always. You have to be able to document things, actively building trust, reach out to people, be intentional when you have a meeting, rather than you feel like the people just should know. No, you have to reach out to be intentional. And also providing this psychological safety across continent. It's probably half the team during the when we're hiring the last, during pandemic, they are all fully remote. They never met their team member before. Mm-hmm. So communication, the really building the psychology, safety, and trust, and through blameless culture, really fundamentally shape how I think about leadership today. I think a lot of us evolve just because the environment is different, the people you're actually working with is different, and the distributed culture and also the remote first or hybrid culture is all shaped what we become a more empathetic leader, but at the same time, how you actually be able to collaborate with team in different backgrounds.
Yeah, the remote piece is probably the biggest shift I've seen. I mean, I remember the first startup I worked at, even if you were sick, you weren't allowed to work from home. I mean, it was like, if you're not here, you can't possibly do good work, right? Then you go to post-pandemic, and I worked with people for years that I never met in person. And then eventually I did meet them in person. And it's like, I've known you for years, but actually this is the first time we're ever meeting, which was such a huge difference from, when you're an engineering team and you're going to the office every day and you have your 20 engineers in the room with you, and they can easily just walk over, or you can easily just call a quick little meeting if something comes up, and you're eating lunch together, and you're sometimes working late and maybe eating dinner or doing things together the outside of work. It's easier to build a culture and like a cohesive sort of like team where everyone feels like, all right, we're all in this together. We're all in the trenches together through the good and the bad. And how do you replicate that virtually? That's difficult. And that's
Absolutely.
something that like most software companies have had to do in the past 5 years. But still to this day, it kind of blows my mind that it worked. And, at least for most companies, I would say it worked. So moving on to, so data engineering. So you were leading data engineering, then real-time ad systems, and now global platform orgs. Sort of, those are all fairly different. How has your view of technical leadership changed across those domains?
Yeah, so I would say when you're looking at technical leadership, it's not being you're the most expert in the room. Because when I was leading on first journey on a management journey, I grew up as a software engineer, and I'm working on the data. That's my two-thirds of my career is actually working on data. But early days on the leadership journey is you are the almost like the smartest people in the room, and then you are know all the answers, right? That's early journey. But you always in the weed, deep in the weed, to know the system and decide and also carry out most of the work. But when you actually grow your scope and also expertly leading a global team in very many different capability, it's less about you knowing every technical detail, but more about being a great orchestrator, meaning like you're the one to connect the dot, connect things together. So my view have evolved to see the technical leadership as a used from a designing a system to designing of system of people. So it's a system of software, a technology, but now it's a system of people. And the platform you can solve the complex and ambiguous problem. It's also, I mean, a leadership when you grow higher is about setting the vision, removing the roadblocks, and ensure our team have the autonomy and clarity to succeed. So that's the involvement of the leadership.
Yeah, and it's interesting about, as an IC, sometimes you are one of the smartest people in the room. But then when you move to a leadership role, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to surround
Exactly.
yourselves with people that are in their respective areas, probably the smartest people, right? And that elevates the whole team, right? I think that's
Yes.
also a big part of building a high performing team.
It's a preferred. You are, I mean, surround yourself in the smartest people, and they are the one actually going to be, they are a subject matter expert in certain area. If you're the smartest people knowing the best, there's some things wrong.
Yes.
Especially when your team grow and you're not going to be able to scale that way. You cannot be expert of everything. It's actually always better you find people when you hire, attract talent, find people. You find people smarter than you are. You find people knowing deeper than you are in this technology, but also team working together so they can collaborate, bring the best out of everybody.
Yep.
So that's the leader is to do.
That's a key ingredient, and it's something where you have to let your ego take a back seat and be humble. And some companies or startups, it's like they came from a culture where they were the smartest person in the room, and subconsciously or not, they might not hire the smartest people because they want to remain the smartest person in the room. And if everyone around you is smarter than you, in a way you could argue you're not really in charge anymore because they're in charge because they're smarter than you, right? So you kind of have to let go of that and be like, you know what?
Yes.
I will become smarter. Our product, our team, our company will become better if we hire the best people, the smartest people, and everybody has to, even those people have to like check their ego at the door. And if you are the smartest person
Absolutely.
in the room, that is definitely a problem.
Yeah. And also another thing is you're looking at it, everybody brings something on the table, right? So everybody have some their expertise. As a leader, you're the one be able to connect the dot. You're the one be able to articulate the vision, and you're the one be able to connect, have people collaborate. I think some part of it, sometimes if a company doesn't have the smartest people, and what leader doesn't have smart people, meaning that they reflect their insecurity in their self,
Yeah.
their capability, right? If you are confident about your capability to be able to working with smart people, that's actually is most exciting thing to you stay ahead of the competition, you are cutting edge, and you are working with the smartest people and elevate you. I think that's just the different way of thinking about
It's
leadership.
way more exciting too. Like, because on the flip side, with the insecurity, like I remember the manifestation of it was I worked for a CTO who would he would do the hover. So we had our engineering pod. So it's like a line of basically cubicles with engineers in each one. And the CTO would do a round like every hour. And he'd basically like go like this, stand behind your monitor while you're coding, and you'd freak out. You'd be having a panic attack. Just like, why is he watching me code? You know, that shows you like that's not good, right? That's not. But eventually, to that CTO's credit, he would do that maybe your first month or so working there, and then you'd get less hover time, right? Then maybe a new person will get hired and they'd get hovered, and then eventually no one's getting hovered, and that's trust and agency and autonomy. But I distinctly remember in the early days as an IC, like I was like, oh God, please don't come over here. Like I don't need you hovering over me. It doesn't make me write code better. But shifting gears a little bit. So Zendesk recently shared some pretty impressive results with GPT-5, which is pretty fast because it did come out too long ago. So fallback escalations were down 20%, faster app development. What does it actually look like under the hood to integrate and operationalize AI at that scale?
Absolutely. Thank you for calling out the recent announcement. When GDP5 come along, we are the first few companies already have a GDP5 on production for our AI product. We are super proud of it, and this is reflecting a close partnership we have with cutting edge large language model provider to constantly innovate. We innovate together, constantly be partner to be able to adopt the latest technology. So thank you for calling on that. Under the hood though, I would say it's a layered system. First, there's the data. So we have to ensure our data pipelines are robust and that we can securely, efficiently across, basically access the right context for the model. So it's not about the best model on the market. It's about how you choose the right model for the right use case. So the second layer is there's AI platform layer. So while my team is responsible for AI infrastructure in the platform, that's where a lot of heavy lifting is happening. That's including like prompt engineering, model evaluation selections, and also creating necessary guardrails. And also we deliver when one provider have some outages or performance issues, we have secondary system behind the scene we can fail over. So customers shouldn't worry about this. We will worry for them. We will make sure providing reliable and trustworthy service for them. And then finally, there's a human in the loop component, right? There's when you have the right data in the right model, you want to make sure you're building the interface that allow human to seamlessly using AI. Well, the feedback constantly, the additional data come in, the feedback to improving the model, improving the use case. It's really a continuously cycle of iteration and improvement, and really apply the right use case to the right model, and also seeing how you scale operation aspect to make sure customer will get the best experience possible.
Yeah, the redundancy and the constant improvement are the most important things, right? It's like it's
Exactly.
funny whenever I see the internet lose its mind when one particular model falls or crashes. I'm always like, you don't have another model that you can access? Like, you just use one model or one LLM and your product breaks and crashes and everyone's freaking out. That always, I guess that's like the DevOps part of me. That's just like, you should have access to like 3 different models at any given time. And then the continuous improvement, I think, is something commendable, because I think a lot of companies haven't really figured out how to use AI for that in terms of product improvement through data and machine learning and AI. That's tough. It's easier said than done, right?
Absolutely. Our philosophy is always using the best model on the market for the best use case, not necessarily the most expensive model, and the matching use case with the model. At the same time, also be able to continue to scale our operation. We are at the inflection point right now. Make something work as a prototyping is easy, but if you make that at scale for all kind of edge cases, and I mean also different kind of scenarios, when the model provider is not reliable, then you actually have to really truly thinking about how do you operate on the AI environment, and really building the protection layer. And so we always go for the best model for the best use case. And there's also component for security as well, right? So some company want to have a the model localized in their country, in their location, and also cost is the major consideration for the company as well. You also want to using the best cost per performance model. So all of this is a part of operation excellence. We are bringing that in the team and have a team actually really focus on how we operate AI, not just developing using AI.
Yeah, and that sort of leads to my next question about how you think about trust in AI. So with Zendesk, you have so much, all your customers essentially have very sensitive data with you guys, and support data, privacy expectations and requirements. How do you sort of approach that?
So our thought is trust is not a feature. It's the fundamental principle. Everything we do, you have to first have a trust. And that including we're building our AI with three key aspects. Number one, privacy. That meaning we incredibly deliberate about how our customers used, and we never use them to send to large language model provider for train external models. The data is protected. The PI information is I will say masked and redacted. We want to make sure that customer data they have always protected. Their privacy always protected. Number two on the AI trust is explainability, meaning like when the AI makes some decision on the output, you need to be able to explain and show how the agent why AI makes certain recommendations. So then, therefore, the customer can trust that recommendation or the action they are taking. The finally is reliability I mentioned earlier. We should also ensuring AI is a trust partner. They have robust fallback in place when it couldn't providing a confident answer. Some is because the model maybe just not available at that time. We will have a fallback mechanism. We did that. Second is sometimes the AI also hallucinate and they don't know the answer. They make up an answer. They tell you something fake. We don't want that. We want our customer service were provided. If they don't know the answer, they tell us so. We hand off to a human. Human will be handle those complex use case. So this is how we build trust with both customer and their agent. We also give a control to our customer. So customer can tune about how they want to have their brand message, how they want to be able to using AI in certain use case, and they have a fully control when to turn on, when to turn off. So I think all of the combined will ensure the trust. AI also our customer trusting us to providing that service.
Yeah, and I think the human in the loop part is also really important, especially like you mentioned hallucinations. Like
Yes.
I interact with LLMs like on a daily basis, and every once in a while, I'm like, thank God I looked at this before it went out into the world. You're just like, where did that come from? But I'm sure in the years to come, there will be less and less hallucination as these models significantly improve, and they are, right? It's like I mean, I can just think of the LLMs like 2 years ago versus today, especially on the coding side. It's just like night and day.
Absolutely. They always have a human to verify sometimes. Sometimes depend on sensitivity, complex use case. And you always give an option for the human to verify and trust that, and then they can go out. So it's not just about bot, but it's actually how human and the computer and AI interact to each other. That's ultimately providing the best service.
Yeah, and I feel like, there's a lot of concern about how AI is going to affect the job market. But then again, every time I speak to an engineering leader, you hear the words human in the loop over and over and over again. And I think it will also, in a way, create jobs that didn't previously exist.
Absolutely. In Zendesk product, we have both the Copilot, which is to actually assist human to be more productive doing their job. And we also have AI agent be able to, if you trust AI agent for certain workflow and to end, and you also can have a complete automation there. So I think combination of both and depend on the company's comfort level and also how they want to using AI in different use case, that will providing the best option for our customer to adopt AI.
Yeah, because everyone's in a slightly different place in their AI journey, right? So
Exactly.
that sort of leads into my next question, ironically, which is what's been the biggest surprise or challenge in engineering for AI powered agents in customer support?
Yeah. Really good question. So actually, the biggest surprise wasn't a technical surprise. We know this AI evolves so fast. We know it's getting better. But I won't say a surprise, but I think it's it always human aspect. That's I think is a little bit surprise. It's a culture one, I will say. We learned that the challenge isn't simply building a smart model. It's about redesign actually the entire agent workflow and also human to computer interaction. So human in the loop and also be able to see how customer journey to evolve based on the model and also product feature using the AI we produce. So it's really forces us to thinking beyond just a simple bot, but into a holistically intelligent agent workspace and also integrations automation platform. Because oftentimes you want AI, you want your product in their workflow, in the people's workflow. It's not another bot on, but it's actually is the workflow helping you to achieve your goal, your actions. So truly augment and empower the human to really deliver the value. So I think this is require deep partnership between our engineering, product, and the customer success team, and with our partner and vendors to really make this end-to-end workflow happen and work well. So I would say also our customer also depend on us to providing the thought leadership to help them to go evolve in the AI journey, because all the customers in different journey of adoption. So they want us to providing the thought leadership, help them along the journey, when to use, when to not use, how to use it. And that's actually what I see the AI will be evolve and really deliver the value to the customers.
And I want to move over to another subject, which I personally find very fascinating. So I learned how to code in 2010. Back then, obviously, none of this existed. You would open up a blank IDE, blank screen. You're building constructor functions and boiler code from scratch. You're reading textbooks. It's very time consuming. A lot of troubleshooting. If you hit a stumbling block, you're going to Stack Overflow. There might not be an answer. You might have to wait a couple days to even get an answer. And it was nothing compared to if you started learning how to code today. So there's sort of two different types of developers, which is when you started coding, did ChatGPT exist, and did Windsurf and Cursor and Copilot and all these tools exist? If they did, you had a totally different experience than someone who learned how to code even just like 5 or 10, 15 years ago. So my question is sort of, how do you look at that from a hiring standpoint? Looking at junior developers who are just starting out, getting their first jobs in tech, and sort of how does that affect your hiring process?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. And when I started my job, and we learn the hard way, right? So you learn by failure. You learn by something like in the hard work of how to program in certain language and have a real. And it taking quite some time to have a production level code. And then oftentimes you debug and you have an instance and you actually try to fix it, and that's how you learn. And this people talking about this 10,000 hours rule.
Yep.
When you want to get proficient on something, you need to invest 10,000 hours into that aspect, whatever you do. Now it's completely changed because the Gen AI tool, you can get started without even knowing the language. You can vibe coding. You also can the AI probably generate 90% of the code. I personally actually recently just using the Gen AI tool. I'm not Python developer. I'm Java developer, and I'm using and I was just building completely website and game up in Python using the cursor and vibe coding. So never happened before. I would say the landscape completely changed. And for the developers, they are starting from all the tools available. I still looking at them. It's fine. We actually encourage you to using the code, using the coding assistant tool to get started. But we still want the developer knowing what the code produced, you understand it. Because it's very important, even you think about happy path, if AI generate all the great code and then you just deploy to production, that sounds really scary because you don't know what they generate on production. What is the problem they actually could be introduced? And security also is a concern. Secondly, how you make the code modular. When something actually you want to inject in additional functionality, you can actually make that work. You can actually modify it. You can make it better. So what we're looking for the talent is you can feel free to using the Gen AI tool, but you need to be able to explain how that code works, why they coding certain way or not another, but not just not knowing how to coding. So you need to have, what I'm trying to say is you need to have a good fundamentals for how to code, how to solve problem, how to you speed up a large complex problem into a simpler problem. Then using Gen AI tool to generate those coding, and I will say that would be fine. Oftentimes, there's a difference between you prototyping with the coding assistant tool, then you actually deliver production quality code. Not just make it work, you have to make it work at scale and high performance and reliable. Sometimes the Gen AI tool generated code may not be meeting that standard. So it's valuable for you to know how to solve the problem, how to fundamental coding, how you debug, and how you also be able to improve on the coding.
Yeah, it's hard. I doubt a lot of people vibe coding are saying in their initial prompts, oh, and by the way, make sure this works across all these availability zones and works for 500,000 concurrent users and also works if X, Y, and Z servers shut down in these parts of the world. Like, no one, they're not thinking about that, right? They're like, I want to get this working locally on my machine. Well, you're going to have a totally different code base and totally different results from Cursor or whatever tool you're using because you're not even thinking about scale. You're just prototyping, basically. Which there's nothing wrong
and
with, right?
Yes, and on production, you also have to have your code integrate with existing code base and a lot of system connection, and that is still, I would say, challenging to have the vibe coding or, like, for example, coding assistant to completely solve that. I think the code assistant today for prototyping, for greenfield, if brand new, there's not much dependencies, it's much more effective than you have a complex system and you have legacy code, a legacy system, and also there's a massive production scale, and you need to make sure your code is not only working, also working high performance, and you actually be able to scale and handle the volume you actually handle. I think still you need people have the expertise, knowing where to look and how to the best practice of coding. But with the Gen AI tools assist to maybe do autocomplete or even do some little bit design, that's fine, but cannot be 100%. I think 100% vibe coding is still not quite ready for production use case.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is the keep all button. Is if you're accepting everything it's writing, then you basically have no idea what's going on, and it definitely is going to crash. I think I've had like junior developers or people, that might be a stretch to call them junior developers, people trying to get into coding that have never written code before. And they'll come to me and be like, hey, look what I built over the weekend with Cursor or whatever. And I look at it and I'm like, can you explain what this function does? And they're like, no, but it works. And I'm like, it works on your local computer, and that's cool. But what you should do is every time you put a prompt in and you build a little piece of your product, ask Cursor to explain it to you. Ask it to add comments to each function explaining what those functions do. Learn while you're vibe coding. And I don't necessarily encourage vibe coding. I don't know why you would build something without planning it a little bit in advance and putting PRDs together, but it seems to be a popular trend. So that's my other advice is, if you're going to build something, learn what a PRD is, write it, spec it out, figure out and ask what languages are going to help me build this, what frameworks are the best for it, what dependencies is it going to need. Map that out first, and you're more likely going to have a better outcome, right? Than if you just sit down at Cursor and say, I want to build a social media app, and boom, hit the button and start vibe coding. You're not going to get a production quality result there.
Totally agree with you. And also another aspect of, developer, they're not 100% just coding. They actually spend, 20-30% of the time they probably spending coding and programming. But there are a lot of other pieces actually design the system, you architect, and you actually knowing, you have a problem in the hand. how you even approaching the problem, design, and also communicate with people, how you integrate with other systems, integrate with other kind of team. So that's not something completely, I mean, it's not just coding, right? The developers spend a lot of time. In order to do that, though, you need to have a proper training, have a fundamental, and then you know when to using the tool, when not to using the tool.
Yeah, and there's also architecture and DevOps, and once your code base is ready for production, do you know how to deploy it to the cloud? What does that look like?
Yes.
What services are you going to need? What cloud provider are you going to go with? What does your database schema look like? What kind of database
Yes.
are you going to use? So there's so many things that, and that's why I'm a little skeptical of vibe coding, because I'm always like, I don't see how you can take all of those things into account and take scale into account, redundancy, availability zones, load balancers.
Exactly.
It's like
Absolutely.
it's like building a skyrise without a blueprint or an architect or a general contractor or cement. You're just, what are you
Yeah.
going to do? Which
Yeah.
leads me to my next question about where are the future senior engineers going to come from when the developers starting out today are starting out with sort of a big leg up on their predecessors.
That's such a good question. Actually, I'm also wondering of that because it's still you need to build your skill set when you're actually learning rather than just depend on another system. This is just my on top of my head. Maybe there's future of you don't need a senior engineer to really be able to debug, and then the AI just can handle everything. And that's probably going to be in the future if AI become that sophisticated. If it's there become AGI, you probably could do that. But myself, I don't believe the AGI will be that sophisticated as a human thinking as we currently do. In that aspect, I do encourage junior developers, they fresh out of school, they have all the tools available to them. And using the tool, like you mentioned, when you do web coding, or when you actually using autocomplete, and you know what to code, but you autocomplete, really read through the code is generated to see whether you agree or not. You need to learn from that. That's one. That's building their skill. Secondly, actually, some developers still starting writing some skeleton of pseudocode themselves, then they can feed into the Gen AI tool to fill in the rest. So that at least they know how to structure the code, how you structure the design of the code, and then do make sure you also can debug the code, because oftentimes when something doesn't work, then that's the problem, because the AI is not necessarily can tell you and you know where to debug. And happy path is fine, but the unhappy path sometimes is extremely difficult to debug, because AI just spit out hundreds of lines of code, may not structure for human readability, may not structure for you to how to you modular debug and be able to find issues. When that happens, you need to spend the hard work to really understand, really be able to fix it. I think those will build your skill set along the way. I still strongly believe senior developers, when they have the skill in the future, it's going to be elevated even more because less and less people have that skill set. So I do encourage junior people not fully depend on Gen AI tool, but understand the workflow, developing that skill set, then they have a bright future.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It's sort of like both of us alluded to, which is it's the junior developers who are not just vibe coding, but learning what the code actually does.
Yeah,
And the people who don't
exactly.
do that are going to have a much harder time growing into that senior developer role. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, with all these AI tools and different companies have mandates where everyone has to use a certain tool. Some of them are more laissez-faire and you can use whatever AI tools you want. Some have no rules, whatever, about AI. And I'm curious, it's had a big impact on engineering metrics. And I'm curious, what are the engineering metrics in this AI era that matter the most to you?
Absolutely. So, engineering metrics have so we actually have a Gen AI adoption journey started Q4 last year, and we see significant adoption on the tool. We also provide a few options for the developer to choose from: GitHub Copilot, Cursor, and also Cloud Code. And then what we're looking at we increase the adoption so much, but at the same time, then so what? When you adopt the tool, what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
And we do define a few engineer productivity metrics. We're looking at it. So those right now we're still in a way how to connect adoption to the productivity metrics. So that's including both quantitative and the qualitative kind of metrics. And quantitative metrics, like for example, lead time to change. How from the when you have the coding in there to all the way you go production, is that time shrink, right? And how you have like for example the failure rate. Either you have more bugs or less bug, and so those are a couple examples: lead time to market, lead time to change, and change failure rate. There are also qualitative metrics. Developer satisfaction, their experience also matter quite a bit. If a developer not motivated, they actually not really do the best work they think they could do, also not going to help to have a better productivity. So holistically, for both metrics, ultimately is developer feel they are not only feeling they're more productive, they also truly more productive. So we're looking at both aspects.
Yeah, it's something that every engineering leader is dealing with right now, is sort of exactly what we're talking about, which is how do you holistically is the most important thing, because in isolation, metrics are meaningless. You have to look at
Yes.
everything as a whole. And just because everybody's using Cursor or Windsurf or whatever it is, doesn't necessarily mean it's making your team more productive or that you're getting a positive ROI out of it. So I think it is something still not at its full maturity rate, in terms of a lot of boards, or executive teams are like, hey, how much more productive are we because we're all using these AI coding agents? What's the ROI on that? And these engineering leaders are like, let me get back to you real quick. It's a tough question to answer. And I've spoken to a lot of engineering leaders, and they're all in different parts of their journey and sort of like trying to figure that out.
Yeah, we start from the data first, and the data on adoptions and on different tooling, and also we have defined what engineering productivity metrics we care about. Then we starting at least have a baseline first. Then when we see more and more adoptions, are we move the needle for productivity metrics? That's including, of course, quantitative and qualitative. And it's all, I would say, on the system level, you see different aspects. Some team is more productive, some team is stay the same. But the good news is that at least you don't see the productivity going down, because sometimes learning curve and other things could be make productivity going down. But when we deep dive into a certain team, when they're using the tool properly and apply to the right use case, another thing I want to mention, Gen AI tool we're using selectively on certain use case will be very productive. If you have a code refactor, for example, that's actually one of the use cases really working well. You generate test case, you generate documentation, and those are pretty effective. And the greenfield is more effective than complex kind of system integration. So some team is very productive. I see some team is 30% more productive than used to have with the tool. But some team is not changing the needle at all. So they stay the same. So, but I think it's over time when we see more tool adoption, people using the right use case, that's when we see the wider the move the needle for the truly the ROI discussion of all the board and the C-suite care about.
Yeah, it could be incremental, more incremental for some teams. And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because that is the thing. Because I just asked about engineering metrics in general. But really, a company is a group of teams. I mean, they are technically a large team, but within that team, there are multiple units, teams, groups, squads, whatever you want to call them. And the ROI and productivity is going to be different from team to team, from developer to developer. And so that's a whole other part of this productivity and ROI question.
Absolutely.
But moving on to sort of like hiring and culture. You've built teams across multiple industries. I'm curious today, sort of, what do you look for when hiring engineers in this AI world? Has it changed?
Yes. I mean, hiring engineering, I think from the people side, I don't think it's changed with AI or not AI. In general, I think when I hiring either IC or leaders, there's a three quality I'm looking at. So number one is a curiosity. So this is especially important in the AI era. So we need people to be excited about something new, and technology field constantly changing. AI changing very fast, day by day, everything changed. So that evolve our thinking. You need to be able to curious about and continue learning about something. You need to be able to have this growth mindset to basically embracing the change. So curiosity is number one. We're also looking at people are system thinkers. They can see a bigger picture, really be able to how they think about their team's work fit into the bigger picture of company and not just limit to their team that they're doing. Fit into the, I would say, entire product and the company ecosystem and the strategy. So this is especially true for leaders. You actually have a really thinking about bigger than you are, bigger your team are. Finally, I think this is also important for the team to collaborate. Even more so for the leaders is empathy. So the ability to build a strong psychological safe team, and then now is more critical than ever. So my strongly believe is technical skill can be learned, but this quality are really important for great leadership. Great leadership doesn't mean you have to be leading team. You can lead yourself. You can leading what do you do, right? So this quality doesn't change between IC and lead the people manager. With those, you can learn fast, you can move fast, you have growth mindset, you will become much more impactful for the company and for your customers.
Yeah, it's also I don't know. I don't know if you can teach curiosity and adaptability. You know, those are sort of inherent things that you either have or you don't have. And
Exactly. I always,
how do you even
yeah.
identify that in a candidate? That's also pretty tough, right?
It is. There's certain way you can ask some question based on their past experience and how they be able to going through some change. And are they driving the culture change or are they resist? And there's a between the line when you're talking with a candidate for their past major transformation project, what the role they play. There's a way to assess, but it's difficult to knowing the holistic view just within a hour you're talking to one
Right.
person. So I always strongly believe when you hire for the character and you can train for the
Yeah.
skill.
Yeah, it's been a while since I personally was hiring engineers, but for me, the biggest signal was always tell me about a failure you had. Tell me about the biggest failures you've had, mistakes you've made, and how did you solve it? How did you get out of it? How did you resolve the failures? And the biggest red flag is when an engineer would say, well, I've never had a big failure. You know, I've never made a big mistake. And then you're kind of like, okay, well, that's very unlikely, but thank you for your time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you just touched that point. Basically, one of my favorite interview questions actually is what's the most impactful mistake you ever made at work and how did you handle it?
Yep.
So if you say you have no failure, that's
Yeah.
impossible. The best people in the tech industry have the biggest and most
Yep.
scars.
I definitely agree. It goes to the point of I think you hire more, or you learn more from the mistakes you made than the successes you have, right? In
Yeah,
life
absolutely.
and just as an engineer, as an engineering leader. So another question about hiring before we wrap up the episode: have you ever hired someone who didn't check the boxes on paper but turned out to be a great hire?
Absolutely. So I once hired a candidate. Actually, is coming from very different education background, and they are not software engineering in training, and they did not have the typical experience and skill set for a software engineering position. On paper, he might not be the best choice, but when I saw he has this incredible amount of intellectual curiosity, super smart, and working really hard, and also a fantastic ability to be able to simplify a complex problem to a break down the complex problem to a small piece of a simple problem. He also brings some perspective unique about how do you I mean, working on a data platform, that back then to Mogul working on data platform. So that what I see is like a also another one I mentioned. He have a working hard. He's biased toward actions rather than
Mhm.
just on paper have a concept. So this hire turned out to be the one of the best hire I ever had, and become grow so fast in his career from senior engineer all the way to like principle and really impactful for driving a lot of new technologies and new decisions we built the system. So I would say that's the best I ever made because they challenged the assumptions, brought a fresh perspective, and then always figure out a way to get it done. So that's those three things is really valuable for a candidate. Not the typical you have to check all the boxes.
Right. And again, I think that goes back to curiosity and adaptability, right?
Yeah.
All right, so to wrap up the episode, we're going to do a quick lightning round. Up to you how long you want to take to answer each question. So the first question is, what's one engineering principle you live by?
I'm a data in training. For two-thirds of my career, I always driving like data-driven continuous improvement, but using data to back it up.
Got it. What's one tool your team couldn't live without?
I would say one tool I cannot live without. We don't used to have that, but using that every day is we have this tool called the Operational Excellence Dashboard. This is the cover reliability, security, quality, customer support, and also cost efficiency. That's in apply my area of the best-in-class infrastructure, platform, and operation.
I was going to ask favorite interview question, but you already answered that one. Most underrated engineering metric.
I have this metric that I call that mean time to happiness, MTH. So why that's important? Because I felt like this is basically the metric defined for a team to get a clear win and feeling good about your work. Let me explain it slightly. One time I was one of my high performer tell me during pandemic he's burned out, and I tell why, and I thought he's just working too hard, but actually it turned out to be because he haven't have any major wins recently. So therefore he felt like his work is not connected to the most impact. So I would say mean time to happiness is not about just you're happy not to work, but rather than what time it takes from a team to get a clear win so they feel about their work, they are making impactful work.
That's a big one. I like that one. Mean time to happiness. I'll remember that. Best advice you ever received as a leader?
I'm using that day by day as practice. Also the advice is hire for the character and train for the skill. This is exactly reflect back. It's not checking all the boxes. You'll find this is the best people have the most drive, growth mindset, and also get things done, have ownership and accountability.
All right, Nan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure the audience will as well. Thanks again for coming on Tech Teams today and taking the time out of your very busy schedule. For the audience listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, feel free to like the episode and subscribe to Tech Teams today. We have conversations with engineering leaders every week. Drop episodes every week. Nan, thank you so much for your time, and everyone have a great day.
I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for having me, Matt.